Hello, my friend. I'm glad you're here again, taking this moment to slow down. Before we start, take a slow breath in. Let it travel through you, through the noise, through the plans, through whatever you're carrying. Then let it out, gently. Let it leave without needing to name it. Now, just for a little while, let's stay here together. Today's question is simple in words, but heavy in depth. What happens within us when we finally stop running from silence? It's strange, isn't it, how silence, something that technically is nothing, can make us feel so much. Some people enter it like a warm bath, letting the quiet soak into their bones. Others step near it and feel unease rise like static. Silence can be comforting, or it can press against us until we reach for a screen, a song, a voice, anything to fill the air again. We often say we need peace and quiet, but when the quiet finally arrives, many of us don't know what to do with it. We check our phones, we hum, we move, we escape, because silence, when it's real, doesn't just mean the absence of sound. It means the absence of distraction. And in that space, whatever we've been avoiding comes to meet us. There's a certain moment in life, usually not chosen, when we are forced to face silence. It might be after loss, when the phone stops ringing and people stop checking in. It might be at night, when sleep won't come and the house has nothing left to say. Or it might be in nature, far from city lights and human voices, when the world grows so still that your own heartbeat feels loud. In that kind of silence, the running stops. And when it stops, things we didn't know we'd buried start to move. Memories surface. Feelings long postponed stretch awake. It can be uncomfortable, like meeting an old version of yourself you never fully forgave. The silence doesn't punish. It reveals. It shows what's been under the noise all along. I remember once standing by a frozen lake in the north, where the snow had muffled every sound. No wind, no birds, just the creaking of ice shifting beneath itself. At first, the stillness was beautiful. Then it became almost unbearable. My mind began to fill the space. Thoughts, worries, to-do lists. I caught myself wanting to speak out loud, to prove I still existed in that vast, quiet expanse. But when I stayed, when I let the silence remain unbroken, something else began to happen. I started to hear, not with my ears, but with a different kind of listening. I noticed the rhythm of my own breathing, the faint pulse in my wrists, the distant crackle of the lake's frozen skin. And behind all that, a subtle hum that felt less like sound and more like presence. Not mine alone, but something larger, as if the silence itself was breathing with me. That moment didn't give me any grand revelation. It didn't answer my questions about life or purpose, but it changed how I understood silence. I realized it wasn't empty, it was full of everything that doesn't need to speak to be real. When we stop running from silence, we stop running from ourselves. That's the first thing that happens. The second is harder to describe. We begin to recognize how much of our lives are built around noise. We use noise to prove we matter. Busy calendars, constant notifications, endless conversations. Noise is validation. It says, I am doing something, I am connected, I exist. But silence says, you already are. You don't need to prove it. For many, that's terrifying. If there's no noise, no constant motion, then who are we? What's left when there's no story to tell, no role to play, no one to impress? The truth is, silence doesn't erase who we are. It returns us to the foundation of it, the part of us that existed before anyone gave us a name, the child who could sit under a tree and watch the light shift through the leaves without needing to explain why it was beautiful. When people talk about mindfulness or meditation, they often describe it as a practice of quieting the mind. But maybe that's not quite it. Maybe silence isn't something we create. Maybe it's something we uncover, something that's always been there beneath the static of thought, like a calm sea beneath the storm waves. When you stop running from silence, you start to see how many layers of noise you've been wearing. The constant inner monologue, the expectations, the replaying of conversations, the rehearsing of futures that haven't happened yet. The silence doesn't make those things vanish. It just lets you see them for what they are, passing weather, and you, somehow, remain beneath it all. Sometimes silence feels like loneliness, but the two aren't the same. Loneliness is wanting something outside you to fill a gap. Silence is the gap itself, patiently waiting for you to notice it was never empty. There's an old idea that the universe began with a sound, the great expansion, the first vibration. But before that sound, there was silence, the silence that held everything that would ever be. In that sense, silence isn't the absence of life, it's the womb of it. Think about how every piece of music depends on pauses, how every conversation needs moments of breath between words. Without silence, even beauty becomes noise. The pause gives shape to meaning. So maybe that's what happens within us when we stop running from silence. We begin to hear the pauses in ourselves, the spaces between thoughts, the quiet awareness that watches it all unfold. And in those spaces, we meet something unshakable. Of course, this isn't a one-time discovery. Most of us keep running from silence again and again. We fill the gaps with distraction, and then we wonder why we feel thin, stretched, distant from ourselves. But the beautiful thing about silence is that it never chases. It waits, patiently. Every moment is another chance to return. You don't need a mountain retreat or a soundproof room to find it. You can feel it right now, in the small hush after an exhale, in the pause before answering someone, in the stillness between one heartbeat and the next. That's all it takes, to stop for a moment and listen. Sometimes silence will comfort you, sometimes it will confront you. Either way, it tells the truth. And once you've felt it, really felt it, the world never sounds quite the same again. Because you start to notice that even within the noise, there's a deeper quiet, like a background note, holding everything together. You hear it in the spaces between raindrops, in the slow breath of someone sleeping beside you, in the way light touches the floor in the morning. The silence isn't gone, it's just moved inside you. And when it does, you stop fearing it. You stop mistaking it for emptiness. You realize it's what allows everything else to exist. Thought, sound, movement, emotion. Silence is the frame that makes the painting visible. Maybe the point isn't to live in silence, but to live with it, to let it walk beside you through the noise, to let it remind you that behind every word, every rush, every song, there's a still place that holds it all. So when you stop running from silence, what really happens is this: you remember how to listen, you remember how to be, And in that remembering, something inside you unclenches. The noise of life becomes music again. The space around you becomes a kind of home, and your own thoughts start to sound less like storms and more like waves returning to shore. Take another breath. Feel the quiet that follows. That's where it begins. Thank you for being here and for listening in this way. Now, I'll leave you with the question again, one that can only really be answered in your own silence. What happens within you when you finally stop running from it? If you'd like, share what you felt or discovered in the comments. I read them all. And until next time, keep walking gently with the quiet. This was Yarven's Questions.